Now, Pavarotti was a good friend.
So let's get started. Today what I wanted to discuss, and I want to try to put a lot of your minds to ease out there before this thing gets blown out of proportion, and that is that Garrett Discovery document. First of all, I'm gonna hit this thing from two different directions. The first direction is the fact that the Garrett Discovery document was generated several days after the arrest of Bryan Kohberger. Now, we all know that the eyes on this case were tremendous even before the arrest of Bryan Kohberger. So once that arrest happened, it's not too hard to figure out that there's some pretty tech-savvy people out there, and a lot of accounts were created to imitate Bryan Kohberger, in Bryan Kohberger's name. Some of those accounts were created in a fashion to where it was hardly indistinguishable from Bryan Kohberger. Now, because of that, once those accounts were created, of course they had him follow the victims, because that's what people do. So when this document was run through this Shadow Dragon program by Garrett Discovery, and apparently this program is very intensive. It goes through and it finds connections that you would never even think something could find. But because there was already fake accounts from others for Bryan Kohberger, and they were probably very similar to things that Bryan Kohberger actually did, that Shadow Dragon program would have absolutely picked up those false accounts and included it in its final draft, or whatever you want to call it. And that's why, if you listen close to the interview that Forensic Frenzy did with the gentleman from Garrett Discovery, they mentioned several times that the information was not vetted. You can bet the vetting process would have gone in and found the fake accounts that were associated with that search of that program, and they would have been able to eliminate them, which would have most certainly eliminated the accounts that showed that he was following the victims online. And the reason that you know this is the case is because the program that Garrett Discovery used to run that was actually, it was conducted just days or maybe a week or so after the arrest of Bryan Kohberger. Now, how long ago was that? You're talking about over a year and a half. It's more than that. I don't know, my mind's blank how many months, but it's over a year and a half. So during that time, with all the entities that were involved in the investigation, and they continued to investigate all the digital activities after the arrest of Bryan Kohberger. FBI hit that stuff hard. The fact that they didn't latch on to the Garrett Discovery Shadow Dragon program's findings and look further into them and vet them tells the story in itself. And I have no desire to badmouth any of the family of the victims in this case, other than pointing out the obvious factors of, when I say the mother and the stepmother, I'm not downing them as people. I'm not saying they were directly involved in this in any way or to try to demean them. I'm simply pointing out facts in my investigation that has determined me to believe that was the cause of the atrocity. I'm not trying to demean them in any way. I feel for them. I know they're in pain. I can't even imagine. And when we get to the folks like Steve G and the Chapins, I believe they had absolutely nothing to do with this thing, and their loss is just by circumstance of who they happen to be with the night of the atrocity. So I feel for them in every way, and I will never demean them. But they have had access to this document for some time. Other content creators have suggested that it has been sent to them as well over time. And it looks like what happened was they finally found one in Forensic Frenzy that they sent it to that was a little bit more diligent than most of the other content creators, and she really dove into it. So by doing that, though, it doesn't lend credibility to it. It just means that she's done a fine investigating job. But it doesn't eliminate the fact that that thing's been around for a long time. It hasn't been vetted, and if it had any merit, the FBI would have already used it. So as far as them investigating it now, it's a non-issue, folks. There's nothing going to come of it. Now, the other fear out there, though, is the fact that that document being out there in the open could have led to the prejudice of the bias against Bryan Kohberger. There was a lot of talk back in the beginning that Kohberger followed some of the victims online. And even in the court proceedings, when they were discussing the information that was being put out there for change of venue, the court said, the fact that he followed victims online was false, was inadmissible. They even put it out in a later court statement in the docs saying that would be inadmissible. So the fact that it's inadmissible and the fact that it was out there in the public sphere has some people worrying that Ann Taylor could get discredited because she didn't get that removed and pulled down out of the public view and therefore was negligent in defending her client. Well, let me tell you why that argument won't hold up either. So I just want to put everybody's minds at ease. You can basically forget about the Garrett Discovery document. Ann Taylor has a very small investigative team. They've been handed over, we know, over 50 terabytes of discovery information that they have to go through. They have to conduct their own investigation. And how many motions for compel for this discovery have they put in now? 14, 15, 16? How many court appearances? And this is not their only gig. I mean, they're working on other things as well. As we know, Ann Taylor was just assigned a new case. So the fact that they could get her removed from the case for negligence is preposterous, because all she has to do is cite the magnitude of the case and the magnitude of the evidence that she has to go through to acknowledge the fact that she doesn't have time to go and have everything that's online that may be prejudicial removed. And the other factor to that is the fact that they don't have enough death penalty certified attorneys in their public defender's office in Idaho to even consider removing Ann Taylor from the most high profile case in Idaho history. The fact that she was just assigned a case on Mr. Meade, the Aryan Knight, shows the fact that they are severely hampered in their ability to provide public defenders to death penalty cases, especially in northern Idaho. Because let me tell you, the case, and I don't want everybody to start getting in an uproar about that one either. Well, there's some aspects you can get in an uproar about, and I'm going to do a video here in just a little bit that's going to point out some things about that Aryan Knight connection, which makes this whole thing very, very interesting. But the other thing I want to point out on that case, because people are already starting to say, oh, she's having him stand silent and all this. Well, I'll tell you, folks, because of my investigation into this case and my investigation into the Aryan family, I have gone into an extensive research. I've done extensive research on the actual Aryan Knights in Idaho. Included in that research was research on Mr. Meade and Mr. Uppenauer. And because their cases have been in the judicial courts there now for a while, I've already a while back had the opportunity to not only look at their cases, but actually go through the Idaho court docs and read all of the cases, all the filings in their cases and all the judgments so far. I'd already been through all that, so I know all about them. In the case against Meade, what has been done so far is they have filed many motions that were ridiculous motions just on procedural things, trying to get this thing drawn out. And now that they've added the death penalty to the charges, it's just a cat and mouse game. Best case scenario, that one is cut and dry, and the docs prove it, and all their motions are just ridiculous. It almost seems like Meade may have had them file them, and he came up with it. I mean, it's that bad. So, best case scenario in that one is just, I mean, maybe Ann can get have him stand silent, go in on all that bogus stuff they've already done on the case, and try to get them to go ahead and take the death penalty off, give him life in prison without parole, just to end the ridiculousness that case already is, because the motions have been filed. If you go and read the court docs, I mean, they are ridiculous. I mean, ridiculous. And if she hasn't already looked at all that, when she looks at it, she'll know it, and I'm sure she's looked at it, and that case it'll get settled pretty quick. The part that doesn't compute, if you've been following me, is the fact that they assigned her an Aryan Knight that's going to have intricate knowledge of other operations and other things that the Aryan Knights would have had a word in. And I'm digging much deeper into that one now, because obviously she's defending one of the Aryan Knights. I know he was in prison for a while, so if he had any power in that prison, any power at all, then he would be in the know on things. So it's very interesting to see how all this is going to play out. But as far as that Garrett Discovery document, I wouldn't pay it another mind. That Forensic Frenzy, she is a beast when it comes to digging up and picking fly shit out of black pepper. But I don't think this one's going to be an issue for anything. So, but please like and subscribe to the channel. Post your comments, thoughts, criticisms. I'm going to be putting out another video here shortly about the Aryan Knights and how it related to my investigation into the Idaho 4 case, and show you some things that I found a while back that I guess are now relevant. So until then, though, Pavarotti's out.